case, meaning the client retains first the attorney and the attorney brings the work to you, or do you engage the clients directly? How does it actually work typically?
Yeah, so each estate will have an attorney assigned to it. So every client, has an attorney, but they may only meet with the attorney once at the beginning if it's pretty simple. If there's litigation going on, or if there's trust going on, or a lot of, legal issues, then the attorney would be more involved. But some of our cases just barely see an attorney at all. They might review the filings that I do, but if they're lucky, they won't see the attorney much at all. They'll only see me.
Yeah, the goal of setting up a proper estate plan is it kind of somewhat automatically kicks in, and they'll need an administrator to help along the way. That's where you come in. It seems to me you only go back to the attorney if there's a problem. That's not to say it's always the attorney's fault or the plan's fault, because things happen and people contest it, but that's where it comes back. And what's fascinating, as I was waiting with Ashley before we started today, I'm a member of the LA Bar Association kind of chat box service. And it was interesting how an attorney put out a questionnaire and said, hey, here's a state administration checklist. I'd love to get your feedback. And I'm thinking, isn't that odd? Like, he took the case? Doesn't he know already how to administer a case? Is he really going to do it? Doesn't he have a paralegal that does it? Is a checklist that uncommon? And the answer is, to me, and I don't know that Ashley would necessarily know this, that so many attorneys bring in cases that they don't really have proficiency in or volume of experience in, versus the top 10%, 20% of firms, they only do one thing. They're set up to do one thing. They're the staff to do one thing. And as a result, they do it well. So I'm just curious, Ashley, if you had a new estate to administer, do you have a basic process that's your baseline, or a basic checklist that you start from? Of course, you have to customize. Everyone's different, but is there a starting point or template that you work from each time?
Yeah. And I would say, for people who, obviously you shouldn't take something that you have no idea how to do. Attorneys or CPAs, we shouldn't do that. But, we have resources, other attorneys or other CPAs that we can rely on, or, other resources, online, or books that we could consult as well. But as far as a basic estate checklist, yes. I think one of the most important things we're finding is the just initial questionnaire, like getting all the information. We want to know, what is the situation with the decedent's assets? What is the situation with the family? And like, what needs to happen, or what, roadblocks there might be. So, and just the whole process is, I would say, kind of has three main phases. Qualification, we're working on that filing. Then the inventory, that's how much the decedent owned when they died, and the nature and extent of their assets. And then the final account, or the annual account, until there is a final account stage. So, each one of those phases are, different, and there's certainly lists. We even, there's an audit checklist at the court that we're e-filing now. That's new, I think, since we last talked. So, we can see what the court's audit checklist is, so that we can use it to go by, we can go by what their list is, so that we can satisfy everything that's on the list and don't forget anything.
I imagine you use some sort of estate administration software of some sort that is your standard in your office. Are you able to share what I know there's a couple of them. As real estate agents, we get approached, present this to your attorneys. I'm thinking, if the attorneys have software, why would I be presenting it to them? Isn't that part of their business practice? Like, I use a particular software for my real estate contracts. I wouldn't change because I'm pretty deep into it. Is there a software package that you use, and how likely might you be to consider, changing for a particular client or trying something different?
So we use Clio, and that is our case management system, and we've used it since the firm started, and that's been over 10 years, maybe 11, so maybe 12. But I don't see us changing that. We do also use Wealth Counsel, and they have like a specific trust administration checklist built in. So I would say a combination of Clio and Wealth Counsel for the real like nitty gritty practice specific, practice area specific checklists and things like that, and resources.
Got it. And so, and again, the idea that I present to you software almost presumes that you don't know what you're doing, because I would think any law firm that does executive administration or state administration on a regular basis must have something, and they're in the middle of using it. Now, they might be happy with it. I'm sure every company from time to time changes in software. I know Clio, I think, is the market leader in case management in non-estate administration in particular. And I know it's a major company that has multiple verticals, and they're updating it all the time. So the likelihood of you not having something is unlikely. Any attorney that doesn't, it sounds to me like you're kind of starting from scratch. Like, I'm sure there's the sole practitioner out on his own or her own, but
I have seen a few years ago, probably 5 to 7 years ago, I did meet and I met, another attorney at a CPA or the continuing ed, classes that we have to have. And I asked him what case management system he used, and he was like, basically just Excel and email. And I was like, I think I would go insane. How can you not have a central repository for your notes and your documents and your communications? We track all of that in our Clio system, so we know what's going on.
I'm involved in a probate administration where the client owned 20-something properties, and he had a property management firm that had another 20-something properties, and then various accounts with each of those and other assets. And I can see if you're used to dealing with somebody with one house or one investment property, Excel and email might work, but when you get to 20 properties, you better have some sophisticated software, because there's just so much to track that it's just not capable of and not having that software is going to hold you back from really getting that bigger business, I would think.
Yeah. And I mean, even though you say Clio is the market leader, I mean, I do think they're pretty good, but they are responsive to our feedback. We have seen changes that we wanted that have been made, and their support is pretty good too at resolving issues.
Well, I didn't mean it as a criticism of the market leader. I just meant to say they're a huge company.
No, I mean, it's just unusual that a big company, is also responsive.
Yeah. Very good. So let's talk about, because you have you do the estate administration, but you also have the CPA designation, not just as an accountant, not just accounting background, not just bookkeeping, but CPA. How important is the fact of CPA significant in terms of your business, or is it just a nice honorific title that says you're above an average bookkeeper? Are you actually, you're not really doing financial statements that need certification, are you, in estate administration?
Not anymore. No, not in my role right now. The main, the true CPA function that I perform in my job right now is tax advice. And so that's where those 40 hours a year that I have to have in continuing ed, I usually take at least one full day of the tax update for the year to find out what new tax laws have changed. So I don't do tax prep anymore, but we refer out a lot of our estate and trust income tax return business, the actual preparation, but I can review it and see if it's correct or not, because I've done it before and I know what should be there. So I can see things that are missing. I've caught a $40,000 deduction before that was not there. So I can, as an auditor, I can look at things and, see if it's correct. I would say it's not necessary. It's certainly not necessary or required to be a CPA. I think when you have, the higher education you have, I've got a master's degree and a bachelor's degree. and the CPA designation, I think it just proves that you're a higher caliber performer or employee.
Right.
And so I think, I think that it's important to know that, right? So that you know that I'm going to be paying attention to all the details, and that, accuracy is very, very, very important to me. And completeness is as well. And those are completeness and accuracy are assertions we learn, in the Masters of Accounting program. So, and as a CPA, those are important.
I think CPA is one of the best brands in the world, in that people so often say, I need a CPA to do something. And I'll say, really? You have certified financials? Well, no, I just need to have taxes done. Well, that's just an accountant. The fact they're CPA, like my son-in-law is a CPA, it's a nice honorific that, like you say, distinguishes you from the lower educated or less educated, maybe in your field. And it's a nice designation, and I don't mean to demean it anyway. The opposite. It's just that you're not doing that work specifically. So you don't, as a firm, do the accounting you refer out. But I at least my experience is, because I'm in California, it might be different. Of course, the federal returns are the same. It seems to me that you need to have taxes filed by somebody who's experienced with estate tax returns. You can't just go to H&R Block or some sort of local bookkeeper / tax preparer. That you really need somebody who knows what they're doing in this area. How do you guys find those people, or do you have a Rolodex of those people, or how does that work?
Yeah. So what I was also going to say, and this is kind of answering kind of 2 points. So less people are getting into the CPA profession than are retiring.
Yes.
And so there's a real squeeze in the people who are still in it. We can charge more, and we can turn down work that we don't want. So we're really finding that it is getting harder. So we want to, anyone who's out there thinking about becoming a CPA, please get into the profession, or encourage young people to get into the profession, because they can almost write their own ticket now. So, and just to clarify, we do the accountings for the probate court, but not the tax returns. But like just today, this week, I probably sent at least drafts or final drafts of accountings to the CPA to do the taxes. So he uses my numbers, all the cost of administration that can be deducted on an estate or trust tax return. They use, the CPA who's preparing the tax return will use my cost, my numbers, my accounting to do the tax returns. So that's kind of the basis of their tax returns. And I do have a really good story that something that just happened. We had a decedent passed away. We sold the house. We closed the bank account per usual. And we, are you still there, Bill? I don't see you. There you are. Okay, you're on mute. Okay, I'll tell the story. I can't hear you.
Yeah, I was some fancy director work I was doing there. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries. All right, I'll tell the story. So, the decedent's house was sold. That triggers a 1099 for the sale of the house. That needs to be reported on the estate's 1041. It's not a taxable event usually if it's sold within 6 months or a year of the date of death, but you have to report why hundreds of thousands of dollars changed hands. So that needs to be reported. So the accountant, and we got a few quotes, and you get what you pay for, because the experienced one that I work with all the time, of course, got outbid, but that accountant pretty much just he did the returns, but then they got audited, and he didn't even report the house sale, which was the main thing that we needed done. So he also used the decedent's old address of the house we sold. He also used the decedent's old bank account routing numbers, which we closed. So, you get what you pay for. And so I when the client called me up a few Fridays ago and said, I want to fire this guy. What do we need to do? Can I do that? Can I fire him? Can I use my, it was actually an enrolled agent, the IRS has enrolled agents who basically specialize in doing taxes. And so his accountant is an enrolled agent. He wanted to use her. I was like, go for it. As long as she has, I would say at least 2 to 3 years doing 1041s. And that's the return after your 1040. So that's your estate or trust tax return. So I personally really like to see that. We do have a good network and we're constantly seeking out new CPAs. We do have certainly ones that we work with and that we like, but we found that they're kind of getting full. So then we need to find another one, right?
That's true everywhere. I wonder what that is, because I see that, and my son-in-law runs a tax department for a wealth planning company. He always describes how challenging recruiting is. And, the job market I know is tight in some areas and not in others. I think the CPA just doesn't have the sexy appeal. But for the right person, if somebody likes numbers and likes kind of that kind of work, it's a fantastic career opportunity.
It really, I understand why it's not sexy, but I do think that it just opens so many doors.
Yeah.
You can do so many things with it. And there certainly are interesting parts of the job.
And then before the filing of taxes, there's the bookkeeping, particularly for ongoing administration, where you have perhaps assets that take years to unwind, businesses to sell, things like that.
Yes.
And bookkeeping is another one of those areas that, at least here in LA, it's really hard to find good bookkeepers. Is that a challenge as well for your business?
Yeah, I would say so for sure. But we're doing the best we can, and I'm trying to run our department. I think 2 years ago it was really just me and another attorney, and now we've added another staff and another attorney. The attorney's pretty much brand new, so I'm kind of training them up the best I can. So,
do you outsource bookkeeping, or do you do that in-house?
We do it all in-house. Mm-hmm.
Do you ever use like outsourced bookkeeping or offshore, virtual assistant type bookkeeping? That's something that your standard wouldn't allow you to do.
Like for our own firm?
No, for a client, like accounting on an estate, or you have a big project where you need some extra bookkeeping. Is that something? I know some firms would never outsource it from a privacy point of view and control point of view, security, and some do all of it outsourced because it's cheaper. I'm just curious.
To be honest, I don't even think we've thought about doing that because that's what we're hired to do. So, some people, certainly, some people are pickier than others, but, people who want to work with us, we're a smaller but growing firm, we've certainly grown since we talked last 2 years ago, but, we're still small enough that if people want to come work with us, they want to work with us, if that makes sense. Usually,
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk a little about documents. I think now you're not in the planning side, but your firm does planning.
That's correct. And I see planning documents and I know about planning documents. I just don't prepare them.
So does your firm, when you prepare them for a customer, typically keep a set, or do you purposely not keep a set of documents? I know there's attorneys have very strong opinions on both sides of those. The older ones never kept a set. That seems like the up and coming approach or different approach would be to be the resource for the client to keep a set or keep it online with access. How does your firm approach that?
So the client gets a binder of all their originals, and I actually have found that around here, it seems like the more old school attorneys want to keep that, the original will, for the, client's children to come to get the will, to do the estate administration and the probate, right? But there's a lot of liability in that. I've seen firms, close down and then they have like a whole drawer of original wills and they can't find people and they don't know how to contact them. People have moved, people have changed contact information. So it's a real liability, and we don't, I mean, I suppose if someone asked us, we might, depending on who it was, but we, as a matter of course, try not to keep the original set, but we scan everything that goes out to a client or to court. We scan before it goes out. So like when someone comes into their signing meeting and they've got, a binder this thick of originals, we scan it all in, and then we deliver that binder usually, later, either later in the day, or the client can come back another time and get it.
So you're attempting to keep a scanned copy of the signed executed documents online or some way that you can retrieve them later.
We always keep it online, and we can share the documents with the client on Clio. Right. And we can, we have a record of this was shared on this date and it was downloaded by them or whatever. Yeah, we've got like a client portal like you do with your doctor. We have the same thing.
My father was an attorney, and one of his partners did wills. And, in those days they had the old room, and it was fireproof, and a vault, and all the wills were there, and people come in. And then it seemed like the business changed to where attorneys didn't want even a copy of the documents. And I think nowadays it seems to me a minimum standard should be keeping access to a copy of the signed documents, the executed documents online. I just feel like, at least to not have that, I just feel like you're not really serving your customer properly. And I don't know that customers know to ask that, but as a professional, I try to direct them, hey, who knows where you're going to be or in those circumstances. And the documents are recorded. If you're buying or selling property, you can tell, kind of guess where the documents would be, and it gives the family at least an attempt to get it later.
Yeah, I mean, we have people who call us all the time, and they're like, I think I have the original, but I haven't found it yet. Mom just died or whatever. Yeah. Can you send me that? Or at the point when the person becomes incapacitated, they're like, I need the POA.
Right.
And I will say tell me if this is true in California. The only document that is really irreplaceable as an original is the will. Everything else is fine. A digital copy is fine.
Well, I mean, even a digital copy of an executed will is better than no will at all.
That is very true. It's a little harder than the actual original, because it's presumed that the testator destroyed it, but if no one can find it.
I think the default is it's going to show, absent any other information, it's going to be a default as to what the decedent's intentions were, right? And I think that's how judges look at it, as a default. Now, once you add any other information in, how that gets weighed out, that part of the law I have no idea with. But I do know, and I've seen judges say in court, there's other information. We have this, even an unsigned copy, a draft. Clearly, nobody knows if it was purposely thrown away or not. But absent any other information, at least you have a draft that, just like any other author, it gives an idea what their thinking was. And it'd be hard to say, gee, the draft, included all the children. Why would he not? Or the draft excluded this on purpose. Mm-hmm. That gets a little harder, I think, excluding errors in California law. But again, I think the default is trying to understand what the decedent's wish was in California. I think is they'll look at drafts or digitized copies, things like that. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so now you are located in North Carolina. Does your business practice overlap other states, and how familiar are you, and what states are you personally most involved with?
Yeah. So we are primarily only in North Carolina because the attorneys are licensed by North Carolina. I'm licensed by the state of North Carolina. And so as far as my, work, I'm only really allowed to be here in North Carolina and perform true CPA functions. So yeah, just North Carolina, but we work all, there's 100 counties in North Carolina, and I've gone to the probate court in at least 25 to 30 counties.
Wow.
So we can go anywhere. If someone lived in North Carolina and they've passed away, then we can help that family.
Now, what do you do when they have assets in multiple states? Do you coordinate with attorneys in other states to administer selling other property, things like that?
Yes. So I had one that's coming to mind that was open for 9 years. It was not our fault. So it had property. So the decedent lived and had a house in North Carolina and maybe 1 or 2 other rental properties also in North Carolina. And then like a Poconos house in Pennsylvania and some Connecticut and New York real property. So we had at least 3 other states we were dealing with and our own. So so in those property, the executor had to qualify as the executor in all of those jurisdictions as well, with attorneys there. And this is one point I'll say that's a really big benefit to having a trust is when you have, like, if that lady had had a trust, we would not have needed to go to court in all those other states.
Right.
We could just, the trustee would just have the power to sell. And the trustee has, really broad powers. The powers allow discretion in timing of like when you want to sell. Is the market really good? Is the market bad? Is it better for renting? They can borrow against the property. If they want to draw a line down the middle of the house, they can and say this side's yours and this side's yours, right? So there's really no timeline constraints. With an estate, if there's real property in an estate, we also have to run the notice in the county where the person lived. And so we have to get qualified first and then run the notice and then wait 3 months, so it's just a lot less hassle a lot less hoops to jump through when you have a trust. I would say, if you came into our firm and you said you had properties in, many jurisdictions, then we would probably recommend a trust because the administration will be so much easier than having to go to court and all those places.
Yeah. Now, that said, I think that in general, the goal of a estate plan with a trust is to avoid litigation, and it probably does in many cases. But in my experience, not as an attorney, just as a businessman watching, there's nothing that will guarantee you to avoid litigation, because if there's enough money in the trust and people know about it, somebody's going to sue you for something. Is that a fair? Now that's California. Is that true in North Carolina as well?
I would say the reason why I see people suing each other is because of family disharmony. So if we don't have any family disharmony, another thing I think you can do with a trust or even an estate is you can appoint, an impartial third party. We have a few, clients who trusted us enough to be their executor and trustee. And they did that because they had like a blended family and they didn't want, their biological child to deal with heat from the stepchild. They didn't want things to get nasty. They didn't want to do that. And so they appointed us. And I think in the particular situation I'm thinking of that we did in the last half of last year, that went really well. We certainly had some dialogue and conversations, but we didn't get into a ton of family drama because they don't want to tell us all that stuff. They just want their stuff, or they, like whatever. They just want their money and move on. And they're not going to get into drama so much with us. Does that make sense?
100%. It's interesting that you use the word heat because I tend to get more involved in probate real estate sales than trust. I wish I had more trust business. It'd be nice, but that's not how the cards play themselves out. But when there's blended family with step kids, the child from the prior wife, the child from the current wife, it seems like they just enjoy using every decision as a bludgeon to make up for 30 or 40 years of what they see as parental favoritism. And
Yes.
it's like they don't have a psychiatrist or therapist, so they're just going to use every decision on the real estate transaction as their therapeutic, I think, hammer.
Yes.
And that's ends up being me too often. And though I get it and I'm okay with it, I think it personal. But I also feel like if the decedent had seen that, then they would have wanted to avoid it with proper planning and proper estate planning, because nobody wants to see those siblings fighting 30, 40 years later. It's just brutal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a case where a man had a child out of wedlock, and I don't know personally, but I imagine that'd be a source of friction in the marriage and amongst the kids. I could see where, gee, you left mom and had a kid, and apparently he took care of her, but like kept it on the down low and tried to keep it out of sight. But they knew about it, and of course, after he passed, and he didn't properly plan. Well, California, they get like half of the state, and so here's a child who feels like they're entitled to get, all of dad's estate, and they're splitting it with this child. Oh, it was just brutal. So, and again, I would just say, you don't have to have a child out of wedlock to justify an estate plan. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it just makes life easier all the way around. Okay, well, just real quick, some housekeeping here. Let me get my notes out of the way. I want to. Where are we here?
While you look, I'll tell you that you should look for the will everywhere. There's been wills found in toilets, in the back of the toilet, in a waterproof container.
Wow.
So make sure you look everywhere. People don't find that until they're selling the house and there's an inspection.
I think Aretha Franklin, they found one of her wills stuffed back in a sofa, right? They had a will, but they later discovered a later will, and it was like rolled up and put in the back of a sofa. And of course, the allegation, well, no, you hid it there. No, I didn't hide it there. So you're right. Look everywhere for it, I think. Hey, real quick, just housekeeping. We're lucky today to have Ashley Palmer. She's a repeat guest from our program. She does estate administration and probate paralegal, and is a CPA and a certified investigative analyst.
Internal auditor.
Internal auditor. There you go. With the Walls law firm out of North Carolina, and their website is wallslawnc.com. wallslawnc.com. And if you go on there, you'll see a picture of the team, and you'll see, if you scroll down, you'll see a nice picture of, I didn't wait long enough, but you'll see a picture of Ashley there. And to our website. So there we go. Our team, our attorneys, our staff. My website's slow. There we go. And there she is amongst the other team. And she's a paralegal and probate supervisor and all-around great person. We're really glad to have her. This is Probate Weekly. We do this every week, Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And we record it, and we live stream it onto Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and record as well. If you want to get reminders, go to probateweekly.com and register. You'll get reminders. If you scroll down, you can sign up for the audio version, or the YouTube will have the past episodes. Love to have you there. And then we continue the conversation on our Facebook group, probateweekly.com. If you have referrals or looking for referrals or introductions to attorneys or realtors across the country, love to have you there. We have 3,700 members. Also, feel free, if you have any probate-related or estate-related content, post it in here. We'd love to get some extra views for you, some extra likes. Courtney Rollins, I think, has built his YouTube channel by posting in our group. So I'd love to have you guys participate with that. And then lastly, I do an email mastermind class for focus on real estate and small business. Very affordable. And the idea is this is the foundation of marketing to keep in touch with your clients and your vendors. If you're interested in that, text or email me. I'd love to get you to join us on that. We do the next one, I think, March 27th. So love to participate in that as well. So again, thank you for that. Okay, Ashley, next question I had for you, correct my notes, was, so let's talk about business development. Are you involved, every firm's a little different. Some firms have certain people who do the marketing, others have the partners make the rain, and everybody else kind of supports. Are you involved in the business development piece of it, or are you strictly on the operations side?
So we do now have 2 marketing people, and they're doing tech support for me today. And they're responsible for all of our, social media marketing. And so I certainly do get some clients, but it's not a KPI for me, I guess, if you will. But and I looked into going to a BNI group, and while I liked it, I think I'm one of the more extroverted people in our office.
Wow.
So I liked going. I just really don't have time because we have so much work right now that I don't really need to do it right now. So yeah, I would say mostly it's our marketing people's responsibility.
But here you are today.
Yeah.
And so I think that's is my approach is, you don't have to drive here. You didn't have to park your car. You have to drive home. And hopefully the technology is in your office. And, in an hour, I think you can reach a couple hundred people. I think that's the goal and why I do this. And I think the other part that I like about this marketing rather than BNI, and I'm not against BNI either. It's a big time commitment to go to the meetings and go regularly. But what I like here is you have a chance, I think, to educate your prospective clients. So then they'll say, wow, I'm impressed with Ashley. I'm going to choose to work with her. The network marketing is so much just about your smile and personality. And I'm not against that, but I feel like this gives you, in your case, I think, an unfair advantage in that you are substantive, you are educated, you are active in this field. Why not demonstrate it rather than just be another person at an event where it's hard to really prove who you are or what you do?
Yeah.
I think it's the advantage of it.
I get that.
Okay. So does your firm, do you only administer estates that your firm prepares, or do you take other firms' messes and try to help your clients through that process? I'm sorry, did I say that? How many
our own clients' messes?
Well,
it's not that big of a deal. It's not that much of a mess because the people get along, so that makes everything easier and less expensive. But we had a client who got qualified for his mom's estate and divvied it all up within like a month or two of his mom's passing, right before the pandemic. And then he didn't know how to do the inventory and the final accounting. So we're currently in the process of doing that with one of the counties that's, I don't know. No, I don't want to throw shade on anyone, but they're not the easiest county in North Carolina to deal with.
Okay.
I will say one of the best counties is Durham. Durham County, where Duke is, they are on point. They run a really tight ship. If we send them something on a Monday, we will have it back the next Monday in the mail. So, and they're going to e-filing soon, but I don't expect really that to change all that much.
And the business does vary from county to county quite a bit, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean some clerks, I think in the more populated counties, the urban counties like ours, we have in Wake County, we have an attorney who is the clerk. He's actually running for judge. In the populated counties, they are usually attorneys, but sometimes in the ones out in the middle of nowhere, it's like literally just the clerk, and they don't have any staff, and it's just one person, and they're not an attorney. I couldn't even imagine like how you.
And they're nice, and then they talk to everybody.
Yeah,
but they don't have the depth of expertise that you get in the city. It's the same thing in California and the more remote. We're a big state. I think people think of us as being all Los Angeles, but it's not the case at all. Maybe population-wise, mostly LA and San Francisco, but we have a lot of counties they're as rural as North Carolina, and the people that are just as nice as they're in North Carolina, but they don't have, the examiner is not an attorney. It's the same clerk that takes the paperwork and opens the envelope. And it's a whole different experience than Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So if you were talking to a family member, maybe a younger niece or nephew or cousin who was looking to get into real estate and working with probate and or trust administration real estate, is there any particular advice you'd give them as far as how to build their business or what you'd recommend for them as far as activities?
So young people looking to get into working
real estate and working in the working the peripheral probate and or trust administration. I mean, you obviously work with real estate agents as property gets disposed. And I'm sure
Correct.
you work with good ones and I'm sure you work with bad ones, right?
Mostly
So,
good, but yeah.
well, you choose to work with the good ones. And then
Yeah,
sometimes I'm sure customers come prepackaged with their own, and
true.
that's hit or miss, right?
Well, and sometimes they're young and they just haven't done this before and they don't know what they're doing, but then they call me for anything else that they might, any other estate work that they need. I mean, I would say the thing that comes to mind, I mean, two things come to mind. One is like networking with attorneys and other we call them wealth professionals, right? Attorneys, financial advisors, people who are dealing with people when things change, when they get married, when someone dies, when they get divorced, and or when they start a business, but the other thing, like if you wanted to get really clever about it, you could just look at the court files now, either online or in person, because only about, I think, 20 of our counties are on e-filing right now. You could look at the applications for probate and see which ones have real property and try to contact those people, because our records are the estate file is public record. You might take physically going to the courthouse to get to it, but it's available. And then our real property ownership records are also public, unlike California, right? So you can, if I have an address, I can figure out who owns it.
Well, California, that's public as well. Public property, you can look up and see who the owner of record is.
Because I thought a few years ago I looked that up. Did that change recently? I tried to find one in California.
Actually, call me. I'll be glad to help you out.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I do it all day long. I'm not aware of any county that doesn't, and I'm pretty sure it might be certain tools don't, like I have certain, California has a lot of counties. We're I think 58 counties or something. And so occasionally there'll be a county that I can't access through the service that I use, and I have to go to a title company to get it. But in general, no, it's all public record information on it. You can be a property, I can tell you the owner is and how they took vesting, and I can even get the old documents, how they recorded it.
Okay.
So do you get cold called by real estate agents when you have a probate filing or an estate filing? Do they call you and say, "Hey, I'm a realtor. I see you filed this case"? And
no, they don't, and that's why it could be a good opportunity for someone.
That's interesting, because
I am getting cold called by financial advisors because I'm a CPA, and they're also looking for CPAs. Like financial advisors and attorneys are, I mean, we're in this area. It seems like all of the ones I know of are looking for a CPA or a good CPA. A litigation attorney just called me yesterday to ask for a referral for a CPA for to be an expert witness. Someone who had experience with LLCs and active managers and the taxation of those people. So I knew a few offhand. So, good CPAs are hard to find. So
CPAs are hard to find. It's interesting that's true for you too, because I thought it was maybe just an LA thing, but it is really interesting, that niche of all of that job market stuff going on. That one in particular, CPAs and bookkeepers are the other one that I know all the accounts I talk to find it hard to find good bookkeepers. It's an interesting opportunity. Well, good. Well, okay. Anything I should have asked you that I didn't, Ashley? I know we've done this before, and I really enjoy. I feel like I learned so much from you, and I try to keep it interesting to everybody who's listening as well. Anything that you expect me to ask you that I forgot to ask?
Well, one thing I wanted to go back to, I don't know that I really quite answered it, was I just told a story instead, but we will take anyone, not just our clients. We, in the last, 6 to 9 months, we have gotten really, really busy, and we kind of screen clients. And if they sound like they're real dramatastic, we just pass or just say we can't take it on at this time. So it's kind of like when the therapists say they're not taking new clients. And I see also going back to the CPA thing, I see on all these, accountants' websites, we're not taking new tax clients at this time, right? So anyway, it's not that we're not taking anyone right now, but we kind of only want to take people that we have some kind of connection with, and not just, Joe Schmo off the street with a random thing or like a potential caveat or some craziness going on.
Well, and I think that those customers who kind of shop around for the person will tell them what they want to hear, we all have to be careful about that. And we get business referred by a professional who's working with us. Like, I think for me, when I call an attorney on a probate or call an accountant with a client I'm working with, I'm saying, I'm working with this person, I'm looking to help, but I also can monitor the relationship a little bit or grease the skids a little bit versus just, when people call me, and I'll always ask, how'd you get my name and number? Where are you coming from? Because if the answer is not right, I'm busy too. I don't want to take on the drama and all the heartache that comes with it sometimes. Well, that's a good question. Okay. So you do take, to answer the question then, you do administer estates that you guys didn't prepare. You are looking for it to be referred by somebody, or, you're looking to either understand up front what it's about. You're not looking to get gobsmacked by a problem that somebody's trying to put in your plate from somebody else's.
Correct. Yes.
So in that, then, what do you see as, I know where I want to go with that line of questioning. So do you see common mistakes in the estate's plans that come to you that you try to avoid when your firm writes plans? And what are those common errors?
I would say the most common error with a trust is the lack of funding.
That's the universal answer.
Really?
Yeah, that's the universal answer. I hear that. I mean, I ask this question all the time, and and it's always the case. And so, explain what that means. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. So you go to you go to an attorney. They do a trust for you, and then you put nothing in it. You don't put your house into it. You don't put any accounts, brokerage, or bank accounts into it, or at least make the trust the beneficiary upon your death, or you don't put it as beneficiary for your IRAs or any other accounts. Then it just is there for like no real reason. So if you have things in the trust already, then the will really only should be kind of a catch-all for like small little miscellaneous things, like maybe a vehicle, whatever, to pour over into that trust and then be administered.
So in California, it's important to transfer title of the real property into trust. Is it similar in North Carolina, or is that not required?
It is not specifically required. So, like, for example, if, mom says, I leave my entire estate to my 2 children, then that also does mean the real property. I mean, usually it says real and personal wherever situated or whatever, right? It's got language in there that specifies real estate, but it does not have to specify the parcel. That makes sense. But if it says, I want my whole estate to be split, 50-50 with my children, that is good enough. Is that good enough in California?
No. In California, you would have to take the property and title it, transfer Bill Gross, transfer to the Bill Gross Trust, and record that with the county. Otherwise, I have to go to probate.
I thought you meant to pass it on. Yes. Yes, you do have to deed your property from yourself to your trust.
And record that.
And record the deed.
And that's the common. Now, in California, we have an interesting case called Hegstead, which was found and said, well, he put in the will, he wanted the property to go to his kid. And it was deeded, in the trust, in the document. And he deeded out to refinance, but it was obvious he wanted it in the trust. And so this court's case said, well, his intention was clear. There's certain criteria. So, but the only way you get that done is going to probate court and filing a petition to do that, which is kind of going to probate anyhow. And so people say, oh, it's not a big deal. I just need a Hegstead petition. I say, well, in some ways, that's worse than probate, because that takes 6 months to get a hearing date. Of probate, you get a hearing date in 30 days in California. So, but yeah, you definitely want to deed your real estate in California in the trust. Otherwise, you have a fancy binder that's not going to help you with your real estate. How about LLCs or corporations? You want the shares also deeded into the trust?
Yeah, so that's another reason if someone owns a business, or small business owner, or they have rental property, trust can do you can transition that more immediately. It's a smoother transition. There's less interruption because you don't have to go to court.
Right.
You can the trustee can just step in and keep it moving forward. Right. So yeah, small businesses do have to be probated if they're in an LLC or just, not in anything, unless they're in a trust. So yeah, you can put your business in the trust and then, not have to deal with the hiccup of having to go to court to run things.
And it's a good reminder of this question. I literally asked this question of a planner about 6 months ago, and I hung up and I realized I'd moved my bank for my business to a new bank, but I titled it my own name, not in the corporation, but I had not put that into the trust. And so I thought, I need to get that taken care of. I have the binder, the binder is great, but the binder doesn't do anything unless you do the work to put stuff in the binder.
Yeah. And I would say I may have said this, when we talked last time, a big distinction in our firm and firms that I've worked with in the past is that we help you do the funding. You have a signing meeting where you sign all your documents, and that's not your last meeting. Your last meeting is your final meeting where you come back and show all the paperwork and all the assets that have been actually funded or, been named, they named the trust as beneficiary. And we ask you to show proof of that at the final meeting. So, I think
that's an important distinction. To me, as a professional, I feel like that's now the job is not finished. I've had trainees say, "Hey, I gave them the binder. They went home. That's on them." No, not really, because they don't know how important it is. They don't really understand the mess if they don't put it in the trust. And I feel like, and I don't mean to be hypercritical, but I just feel like anybody looking for an estate planner or administration company, that to me is a standard of performance that you would expect if you're going to refer somebody, I think.
Yeah, and I will say another mistake as well is I see some really smart, maybe in other areas, they're like a professor or, have another, higher level job, but they're not an attorney, not a CPA, and not a financial planner. But they want to manage, they're like, I can do better than then why am I paying someone 1.5% to manage my brokerage account when I can get a better return than he can? But the problem is you don't have someone looking over, okay, does all these accountants have beneficiary designations? Are they all going to go into the trust? Why do we have things in all these different places that just, the pure number of assets, right? It doesn't even matter how much they are. You got to do the same thing for a $20,000 account as you do for a $2 million account. And so if you have many of those, it just makes it harder. But one of the worst things is when we see an IRA in an estate, because that is actually expensive because, I've seen a handful, the most recent one and probably the worst one was the wife passed and, the couple had been married for over 30 years and he was managing everything, and she did not have a beneficiary designation on her IRA, and it was about $800,000. And so because there's no beneficiary and it had to go into the estate, it just defaulted to the estate, then that means it had to be taken out in 5 years. And the tax impact of that is a lot different than if he could have taken it out over his lifetime. And, to keep it open for 5 years, there's an administrative cost, there's our fee, the CPA fee to keep doing the taxes and keep doing the accountings for 5 years to stretch that out. And if it's not worth it, then you know, I mean, if the amount's only $100,000, it's not really worth it. But if it's 800,000, it is. You know, on that 800,000, the CPA calculated that if we stretched it out, we could save him $131,000 or something like that in taxes after our costs. You know, so that's also a big mistake that I see.
Well, I do think the funding is critical, and I appreciate you reminding of that. I may have even got that idea from you 2 years ago, because I've been asking every attorney since. I think that, to me, again, the two keys to me are, how do you make sure the customer gets what they came for, funding the state, and then how do they get the documents if they lose them? And I think those are two parts that you guys hit the mark on and impressed me from the very beginning. Ashley, again, I just want to thank you so much for taking your time here with us today. I know it's late for you there, almost 8 o'clock. Thanks for making time for us as well, educating us. And for anybody who's interested, Ashley Palmer, again, is with the, whoops, I lost my spot here. Present.
Wells Law.
Wells Law in North Carolina. There's her LinkedIn, Ashley Palmer CPA and a CIA, as well as the probate supervisor at Wells Law Group. And then WellsLawNC.com is the law firm, and they're based in North Carolina, and they're phenomenal talent. We've had Jason, I think, as well on our program in the past. This is Probate Week. I'm sorry?
He's coming up in May as well.
He's coming back on in May. So he's been a great guest, and we're going to have him as well. And then Probate Weekly is this program. We do this every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. We live stream it on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you want reminders, go to probateweekly.com. Give us your email address, and we'll send you reminders. Or scroll down, you get the audio version or past episodes on YouTube. And then lastly, continue the conversation on Facebook. We have a Facebook group, Probate Weekly, 3,700 members nationwide. If you're looking for an attorney or a real estate agent in another state or another area, or if you have probate content or estate content you want to promote, love to do that as well. So again, thank you to Ashley for Wells Law Group for allowing her to come on, and her team for setting up. It's great. And we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Have a great one. Thank you, everybody.